So I designed a digital stations lesson that actually spanned, I think it was about 3 Zoom sessions long. And this was meant to replicate a station rotation in the classroom where students could visit each table to interact with different texts and to understand a topic in a deeper way through that station rotation. And so this one fit the standard of the order of points in a speech. And so I make sure in my presentation that I have that standard. It's very simple. The standard is part of how the author unfolds analysis, and there are many, many parts to that, but I'm focusing just on the order of points. So once I've narrowed down my standard, I'm then going to figure out how I can divide the different stations. I had our launching station be the speech, and what I mean by launching is that everybody in the whole Zoom session watched my screen as I played it, because it is an audio clip of the speaker with images to show that speech. So I figured it was a couple of minutes and it was worth it to me that I was sure that everybody had that baseline of watching and listening to that speech as the main text. And then I sent students into groups, and I told them to start at station 1 and work their way through. So I always, in my stations, make sure that there is a timekeeper in the group and that there's someone who might be willing to share his or her screen. And so I provide a timer and really tell the group to stick with 5 minutes. This is the first station, and I provide a written transcript to the speech that they just heard. So all students have to do is click on it, and it goes to a view-only copy. So this is not a copy that I'm expecting students to do any work in. If it was, I would probably ask them to do a file, make a copy, and title it with their group names, and then share it with me share with me. They'd have to find my email. That gets a little bit more tricky, but I just needed them to look at a common document. And then this station was just read the text, and what do you notice that's different? So this was a talking station. And I also give them some tips that they can actually read the text out loud and take turns doing that, and that one person, while everyone else is reading, can share her screen. And before we get into groups, I always show them how to share the screen with a visual. And they move on to station 2. Again, there's the timer, and there is this important reminder. I found I could not say it enough to make sure that we unmute when we talk with our partners, because a lot of students had their microphones muted when they were talking, as I do when I'm an adult many times on Zoom. This one was the note catcher, and it's a shared note catcher, and they're looking at just these 2 questions. Again, I have a tip. One person can record. And so when we're clicking on this note catcher, it is visible to everybody, and that's an important distinction. So all of my ELA classes dumped their ideas, their responses to those 2 questions in this one shared note catcher. And so students started to write in different colors. I asked students to leave their initials, because otherwise there was no way I could figure out who they were. And they made observations with the 4 points of the speech. So that brings them to that shared Google Doc. The next station would be to vote. So again, the 5-minute timer, again, the unmute. They're talking with the partner. Again, I give the tip, one person share the screen. So we're going to vote. And I didn't give them any preview in what Padlet is or how to use it. I visited each group to make sure that they understood, but they entered into this with the task of voting. And I have the 4 different categories that they're voting against. It's which point is most important. Again, it fits with our standard of the order of points as an argument unfolds. And they wrote what their most important point, what they believe the most important point is. And I knew at that time that students were not writing why. So I had students go back to add on to their Padlet response. And then the final station was leaving feedback, or the second to last station was a scaffolded step into feedback. So here they focused on probing and clarifying questions. I really had students spend a lot of time in this Padlet by keeping that feedback loop going. And the next station would be to reflect and revise. So students went back into their original Padlet, and I always link it again for them. And then they're going to write their reflections on that peer revision and feedback process. They're going to write it here. So I give them specific things, paying attention to some look-fors. And again, they leave their name. They're encouraged to write in different font. But this is a station where they're reflecting on the process of analyzing their peers' writing and responding to peers with feedback. And I added this station. It just kept growing, this lesson, but it was so rich. Again, back in the Padlet where they were going to reverse reason. So whatever point they thought was the weakest point, they would have to prove that it was the strongest. And so that was a challenging station for students to get out of their comfort zone and to argue the opposite. But again, they went deeper into this Padlet and continued with the writing. So the final step in the station was where each student would take an open slide. And I called it open slide because it was open to the public, and they would provide a response to a targeted question based on the order of points in the unfolding of an argument. And students were encouraged to read each other's slides as they went through. So I like digital stations because it allows students to really deepen a skill. And in this skill, it was breaking down an argument and responding to peer feedback.